you very much, Mikdad. I'm very happy to welcome our guests today because it means I have to do less of the talking on Indian politics. And Mikdad has already introduced them, so without any delay, can I request Madhava to make his presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. Dear brothers and sisters, I'm so happy that you consider me worthy to be sitting in the middle of you and share my thoughts with you. And I'm honored and I'm humbled by your this great gesture of you. Elections in India. Okay, first, you may ask actually what is my authority speaking about elections in India. I don't have any authority, honestly. I'm just an Indian and brought up in politically aware families. And you may be surprised that the political awareness that we have, I'm actually, a friend has already, Mikdad has already introduced me as a Hindu priest. So the priests' families are they're supposed to be orthodox, right? And if you can quote and you can actually refer and you could actually, now that it's being recorded, I'm telling you a very personal story before I go into the election speech. 1968 I'm born, 1975, the place where we live, the priests and all these, predominantly Hindu upper caste, priest classes and the place where the ward, 90% are upper caste Brahmins. And guess who was our elected representative? It was a Muslim lady called BBG. So why? And you may be surprised, I'm not joking. This is actually sitting here in the middle of you because that is what we consider as secularism. That's what we consider as being politically aware. That means someone who can see you as a human, can do you what is humanly possible, can fight for your human rights, irrespective of the religion, we are supposed to honor them. So that's what I am brought up as. And so with that, yes, I mean, our awareness is too high in the sense, so that's where I come from, and that's the background that I have. Her name is Vibiji, and she's fantastic, and she was the only one who has television in her home, and whenever there is this, cricket commentaries or cricket, because that's the only television that's there, so all us kids, we used to flock to the home, and she used to organize pakodis and things like that. It was wonderful. I mean, I never thought that she belonged to a different religion, though. In the sense, that was what I considered as Indian, being Indian, and that's where I come from. So with that, I want to introduce you what exactly is happening today and what's Indian. The flag of India. What it stands for, it actually has got 3 colors. The saffron stands for the courage, and white is meant for, how much time do we have? Sorry, because we're running late so I just want to make sure that the white stands for purity, and the green stands for, as you know, it's a faith and fertility, and so the navy blue, which is in the middle of the middle of the Indian flag, is actually Dharma Chakra, and it denotes the continuity of nation's progress. And it is, as you know, 5,000 years civilization and 325 languages spoken and 1,652 dialects and 18 official languages. Now I think there are 23. And there are 29 states, and it's 1.2 billion population. That means 1 in every 6 inhabitants of this universe is an Indian. And 2 of them are Chinese. Right. So we are talking about a big country, and it's a democratic beacon. And we could say that these are some of the nice comments that we hear about India. India confirms its status as a democratic beacon. Yet, for this chaotic nation, I will tell you why it is chaotic, with its almost unfathomable religious, linguistic, and social diversity. Not only to hold free and fair elections, but also to deliver stable government is a truly remarkable achievement. This is the Independent which said this, and it's the Independent comment. It's truly the greatest show on earth, an ode to the diverse and democratic ethos, an inspiration to the world. That's New York Times said that. And so 63 years of Indian elections. India has conducted so far 15 general elections and more than 3 million elected representatives, national and statewide. And Barack Obama hailed Indian elections as historic and an example for us all. Okay, now let me give you a comparison, a few comparisons. India has more voters than any continent. India is a country, but than any continent, India has more voters. Entire Europe is 50 countries and 791 million population, and only 449 have registered to vote and bothered to vote. And entire Africa, which is 54 countries, 922 million population, and 566 elected. So North America, 41 countries, South America, 15 countries, put together 910 million, the Americas, and only 560 bother to vote. And in India, it's now almost touching 1.2 billion. It is 1163 million, which is, these statistics are 2011. 1163 million. If you see the electorate, that means the people who registered to vote is 714 million. And it has, I think, recently there was a drive by the Election Commission of India, and it reached to 840 or 850 million, I think. And out of this, there is something remarkable that's going to take place. The youth are actually going to vote. And the largest number of youth, almost 120 million youth are going, they are first-time voters. They're going to vote, 18 onwards, 18 years above. And so that's actually, this segment, the youth segment, is going to decide who is going to be their ruling party, who is going to be their ruler. Why is it? They put it in perspective. In 2009 polls, the Congress party, which is the ruling party of India, today they are in their government, they got only 119 million votes total to rule India. Now imagine 120 million youth are going to vote. So they would decide. And the BJP actually came second, which is 878 million, and BSP, which is Bahujan Samaj Party, which represents the oppressed and the depressed classes in India. That party got 26 million, and CPM, Communists got 22 million, and no other party got more than 10 million. So 120 million first-time voters who are youth are going to decide what would happen, who would rule them. And surprisingly, a lot of them are on Facebook. A lot of them are on Twitter. A lot of them are on the internet. So that's why youth are going to decide, and the youth, which is very aware, they are the ones who are actually going to decide how it will. And so that actually is a mammoth task. As I said, it's almost 714 million voters. They have to be voted. And Election Commission of India, which is official constitutional body to conduct free and fair elections in India, it is a mammoth task. And it is fiercely independent, created by the Indian Constitution. When I say fiercely independent, they take over for these 2 months. I think it's already started in India. They take over the entire government in a way. The prime minister onwards, no one is supposed to say certain things. So, for example, the prime minister, I don't know, I mean, they maybe they are not allowed to. So recently, Bahujan Samaj Party, which is, they have this elephant as the symbol, and during the recent elections, there were so many elephant statues that were actually erected everywhere. Yeah, and the Election Commission said, cover them up. So they have to cover it up, and Election Commission is very, very, very independent, and they would put down rules, and these rules have to be followed. Otherwise, they will throw. There are lots of instances where they debarred the candidate from contesting the election, or even after getting elected, they threw the candidate out of the legislative area. So they do that, and so they are very independent. Okay, India had, it's taken a giant leap. I just put that photo there to just bring some, that small girl, cute little girl, saved a fish from drowning. And she's very happy. Look, and as I have done a kind thing. Because how does that small baby, innocence, she doesn't know whether the fish actually swims in the water. And by saving, because this is how we think. So India took a giant leap, but yet, as an Indian, brought up in India, today sitting here, I openly think that there are certain things which India would have done better. But looking at it as an innocence, maybe that, for example, India constitutional is heavily left-leaning, and Indian Supreme Court said this, that Indian constitution is left-leaning. India doesn't have, India is a socialist country. That means on the Indian election application, if you want to contest in the in the Indian elections, you need to affirm to the Indian state of India, the Union of India, that you are a socialist. And there were court cases. There were liberal Democrats. This has happened in the history. If you want to Google, go and Google it. There used to be a party called Swatantra Party. They refused, saying, I'm not a socialist. I'm a liberal Democrat. Why should I say that I'm a socialist? And then they went to court. And the court said, you got to be a socialist to contest Indian elections. This has happened. I mean, Supreme Court said it's a left-leaning. So India doesn't have a liberal democratic party. All parties which are contesting, I don't know how many of you are aware, though, so I just wanted to bring this onto the table. I'm not a socialist. I was brought up as a socialist. I gave up socialism when Russia fell. And I went through a change of heart, I would say. So I'm more a conservative now. So India doesn't have, so actually they have to say they're socialists, so they'll say, I'm a Gandhian socialist. BJP says that they're Gandhian socialists. That's Gandhi name, everything goes. So, I mean, I am a Gandhian, but yet, I have my definition of Gandhi. Gandhi is used by each and everyone. So, just, the whole world uses Gandhi. So, anyway, Gandhian socialism, and there are socialism, various socialism types are there. So, when you say you are a socialist, you got to be aware, But every party in India is theoretically socialist, I think, or technically socialist. I don't know how you see it. But India is a socialist country, so you got to be aware of it. And, so how is this run? I mean, there's such a big, it's like a very, very big election, and a lot of population vote, and so it is conducted using EVMs, electronic voting machines. So the pilot was done in 1982, and full-fledged voting machine usage started in 1998. 1.4 million electronic voting machines are used, and you will also have got paper trail, audit trail. So it's actually these machines, they do the task. That's something which India has done fantastic, because otherwise, imagine that so much paperwork, so much counting, and a continent needs to be counted. I mean, as I have already shown you the statistics. So EVM does the that electronic voting machine has recently, in 27th September 2013, Indian Supreme Court gave a decision saying, the people are upset in India. They're fed up. Why are they fed up? I'll come to that. I mean, I blame socialism because I'm not a socialist, so I have every right to say what I want to say towards the people who I don't like. Sorry about that. So, but what has happened? Almost all the political parties, almost all of them, they are actually fielding corrupt people, they're fielding criminal people, they're fielding opportunists, they're fielding defectors or communal people, So if, as a voter, if I'm upset, I want to tell my political party, that guy is corrupt. Why are you keeping, why have you given him ticket? I don't want to vote for him. So how would I tell that? So I have now a right, not me, but the Indian voter has a right to press nota. That means none of the above. None of the above. I'm not going to vote, none of the above. So I'm not going to vote any of the above. So that would send a message to the political parties saying, look, don't think that, if in case there are only 4 people, and if I don't like all 4 of them, I should somehow tell the government, the rulers, that look, I want to use my democratic right to vote, but you are not giving me a chance. I don't think that's there even in UK. Such a thing, you just have to, you just say, I don't want to vote, and you sit home, and that's it. But what about your vote? What about your real opinion? You want to give your opinion. How would you give it? To the government saying, you know, all these candidates who are actually on this ballot paper, I don't like them. How would you tell? Just go and, you know, press that button. And people did use it by the recent elections. And you would be surprised, a lot of people pressed that button. So, and what is affecting India? What would affect Indian elections? What exactly is aching India as a nation? India is still a poor country. It's a seriously, you know, the poverty is too high. And Tendulkar committee is basically to find out how many people are really having a decent meal. Then they came to know that 37% of the population, that means 370 million, live below the poverty line. So let me give you a perspective towards it. Below the poverty means, Tendulkar committee says that if you can't have two square meal, that means the proper meal, two proper meal. That means, let's say the full meal, you may have 900,000 calories. Yeah, 2 meals, 2,000 calories. That means a healthy human, for example, at let's say the 24 years old, maybe a healthy human requires 2,500 calories of food to basically survive. The higher the amount of calories that you take, the higher the amount of energy that you can spend. So if you eat less, what would happen is the body actually becomes anemic. It requires more food to do the more tasks. Say, for example, if I am a daily laborer, daily wage worker, and I have to do the heavy lifts. Say, for example, in the Indian railway stations, there are these coolies who lift your luggages. Yeah, to lift that, it requires the body asks more calories. But these guys are the people who do not have enough food to survive their body. So what will the body do if you force the body to lift the higher weight? It becomes cannibalistic. That means it starts actually eating itself. People become more sick. People die of hunger. And so this is a daily case which is happening in India. And that is the reason recently Congress parties tried to bring in some right to food guarantee. Right to food is basically to make sure that everyone gets some food. So I'm just giving the perspective and the picture, and not to comment on whether it is right or wrong, but just wanted to say that India is seriously seriously it has problems with the poverty. And then you may ask, actually, how come people are so poor? Is India not rich? It has been historically rich. I mean, don't forget, Columbus wanted to find the sea route to India. Why? And then, by mistake, he landed up finding the Red Indians in America. He should have gone this side. I mean, if I were there, I would have said, hey, Columbus, go this side, go this side. He went that side and he found America. And don't forget that historical fact that India, those days, was very rich, very prosperous. Historically, it was known as the land of gold and land of natural resources. Indians were rich. India means, those days, the India means Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India put together. It was a landmass. So it was rich, and then it became poor. How did it become poor? Because India, for whatever reasons, went through serious oppressions, especially under the British rule. It underwent a lot of changes, and then Gandhi and all the great patriots, they fought the wars, fought the independence, and then they brought India they brought India independence. But the problem is that there is still serious poverty in India, and it is no exaggeration to say between the year 1996 to 2002, every year 17,500 farmers committed suicide in India. Why am I giving this grim picture? Because I'm actually trying to tell you what would influence Indian voter. That is the reason why I'm giving you this grim picture. The picture is that poverty is a serious problem, and then farmers committing suicide is a problem. 17,500 farmers are committing. They have committed suicide every year. Lots of people, and even today there are lots of farmers commit suicide. Why are they doing that? Because India's GDP is $1.8 billion. India's GDP is $1.8 billion. And India's economy, 16.6% Indian economy. Sorry, it's not there. You can, because you are recording, you could listen to me again. These are the right statistics, which I'm giving you the right numbers. 16.6% Indian economy is agriculture and forestry and fisheries driven. That means agriculture driven economy, 16.6%. It's 50% of Indian workforce is agricultural. It depends on this area. Yet, surprisingly, and it is number 2 in the world in terms of agricultural production and all. Surprisingly, India, for a very long time, they are dependent on the monsoon rain. So that means they have not taken proper steps towards protecting their 16% of their GDP is dependent on the clouds, monsoons. So somehow you need to do something. But then what they have done, 1972, they came up in the parliament. There was this proposal that they wanted to connect the rivers. They wanted to connect the rivers because there are lots of freshwater, ever-flowing rivers. If you connect the rivers across India, somehow you could actually at least manage the agriculture that is taking place instead of believing instead of depending on the monsoons. But then what happened? Those days they calculated they require $30 billion to do that. They said we don't have the money. They said we don't have the money. 1972. And then again and again it came up, and today I think they estimate $190 billion they require. And they still think that they don't have money, but you may be surprised. Swiss Bank and the other banks, they came up and they said they estimate $1.5 trillion is in the illegally stashed wealth abroad. Indians' money is stashed abroad, 1.5 trillion. Which is 1.88 trillion is the GDP of India. 1 year GDP is somehow believed that is abroad. And they are allowing farmers to commit suicide. So if you have 190 billion, if you have 190 billion in your hand, you could somehow do something to the farmers, and they don't do that. Right? So put all this into the perspective, and 120 million youth are on the internet, are aware, they're all going to these colleges and universities. How much anger they would get towards the corrupt establishments. How much anger they would feel. This is not the India that I want. So that is what is driving them. Do you follow me? That is what is driving them. That is the reason for the last 4 years, they wanted, bring back black money. Why? Because if you bring back black money, these guys will not say we don't have $190 billion to construct these, to just prevent these suicides. And farmers are actually adults. They are committing suicide is one story, but there is another story. Look at that. Children, actually, 186,000 children die every year from diarrhea caused by unsafe water and poor sanitation in India. And it is no exaggeration. Listen to this. 1 death took place in India now. Every 4 times that you do this sound, 4 seconds, 1 unnatural death, 1 death that could be prevented has happened in India. It's happening as we speak. So this has to be prevented. If it has to be prevented, how would we do it? What would we do it? How would we actually achieve it? So democracy, voting power. So these are the driving forces for Indian youth. These are the driving forces for the Indian voter. And so there are higher driving forces which actually something that is not right within this country, and I want to do something towards it. I want to prevent it. If I have to prevent it, I have to vote. I have to use my vote. And if I have to use my vote, what if they're all corrupt? Supreme Court already gave you, a power saying, okay, you could reject all of them. So the political parties will get a lesson saying, okay, so the candidate that we gave, he is not liked by the people. So we do know, okay, so all these things are taking place. So India has a serious poverty problem. India has a serious sanitation problem. India has serious child malnutrition problem. We do have problems. These problems can only be sorted out by a democratic means. And in democracy, every person has a voting right. So these are the main drivers for an Indian voter. Okay, you follow me? So I think I'm almost running out of time. Sorry about that. Okay, so there are political parties in India. I have only 4 more slides, I guess. For political parties, and unfortunately, India is a PPTP system. You know what it is? FPTP, sorry. FPTP is first past the post. So if it works fantastic for 3 parties if they are in the fray, 3 parties. That means if let's say that there are 100 votes, and is these 100 votes, if 2 people are contesting, 51 people win, 51 people vote for candidate A, and 49 people vote for candidate B. Naturally, candidate A, just 1 vote extra, he gets elected. What if there are 4 people? Then it is decided 25, 25, 25, 25. What if there are 10 people? Only 10, 10, 10, 10. So out of this, only 1 party, 10 parties are contesting 100 voters. 1 party got 11 votes. It will be given the power to rule. As a result, what would happen is the 89 votes which were against this party were ignored. You see, that is what is plaguing India. Do you follow me? So India has this first past the post system, but there are too many parties. There are too many parties which spoil the Indian election. And so there are total registered parties are 1,617 registered parties, and there are 7 national parties, and recently there is another party which came up with a broom called AAP, which came up with this corruption problem. Against corruption they are fighting. So there is an NCP national, so NCP, Congress, BJP, CPM, and BSP and SP are there. So these are the parties. And who are those prime minister candidates? And 2014, the elections, the prime ministerial candidates, you all heard of Narendra Modi, and he is from BJP prime minister candidate. And Rahul Gandhi is saying that he will not stand as a PM, but the gossip is that he's anyway Congress MPs, once they get elected, if the boat reaches to the election point, and if by miracle or by luck, if they win, then they easily can elect him as a prime minister. So that's the gossip, prime minister candidate. So he is at the moment, he's not declared, but he is understood as somebody who's in the fray. And if there is third front, why am I showing this? I'm showing this slide to tell you that there is in 1996, Congress lost the election in 1996, but they ruled India by proxy. It means the third front got many votes. So for example, Deva Gowda and all these guys, they got a lot of votes. So the lot of votes, they pooled together and they kept the highest party which won the highest number of MP seats out of power. So they can still do that. So neutrally, understanding on the neutral grounds, there is this, there are these, as I said, PTP, the devil is in the detail. How many MP seats you got? So it might swing anywhere. It might actually go anywhere. But these 120 million youth who are on the internet, those who are on the Twitter, those who are politically aware, they think that, about these poverty lines, because statistics that Google is saying, on these lines of poverty, on the lines of actually preventing the, malnutrition, preventing, so they are actually moving towards voting BJP, NDA. So that's the reality, and at the moment they are thinking that the estimate is that 236 votes NDA might get, and yet the others and UPA put together, they might also actually, like in 1996 they might. So that's the mood of the nation, and I think so. That's about the election, and I think these are the glimpses of the elections that are taking place in India. In 2009, this is Muslim community voting and a Christian community voting and Hindus voting. So just wanted to show that Indian elections are run on these grounds. Yeah, I might address some questions if we have time. So I know I'm running terribly out of time. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Madhava. I think we will take questions after Ali Khan's submission so that we can group them into the thing, yeah? Yeah, I think we can. Sorry. Let's bring, yours is. Just click
on this.
Yeah. So, slideshow. From here. This one.
F5.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to come and speak to you about the elections. You heard a little bit about me, so I'm not an authority either on the elections or on politics in India, but nonetheless, I try and keep up. Thank you. I try and keep up through participation in the media and both in English and Urdu print, and I follow the Hindi news too. Thank you very much, sir, for your presentation and for all the very interesting facets of your presentation. So my first two slides cover a little bit of what Mr. Turmella, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, that's fine.
What he talked about in his presentation. So very briefly, there are 543 parliamentary seats. There'll be it'll be a six-phase polling because it's frankly too big a country to go to the polls in one go. There's 17 million people who work on the elections. Breaking down the figure you mentioned in your first or second slide about the 120 million youth vote. Within that, there's a 24 million vote of people between 18 and 19 who will never have voted before. So. And that's perhaps the youth you were talking about who are going to come out.
First time, 18 and 19. I think that's...
No, I think your figure goes up to 30. This one is only 18, 19.
Right, okay.
Yeah. We talked about the number of polling booths, the number of voting machines. One of the interesting facts, and I'll follow up on this in the following slides, is that technically you're only allowed to spend $114,000 per constituency to fight an election, which means in total India should be spending, or the candidate should be spending $62 million, and actually the amount spent on the elections is nearly $5 billion. So you can gauge, and I'll go into what this money is being spent on and how it's being allocated in the next slide. We talked about the none of the above option in the previous presentation. It's important to note that even in any constituency, if most of the people vote none of the above, the person who will be chosen as candidate from that constituency will still be the person who came second. You know, you read about India in the news all the time. You read about the economy, how well it's doing for certain groups. But politically speaking, and there are some worrying aspects to the Indian political process across the board, across India. As it says here, in the last general elections, which means 2009, there were nearly 1,000 candidates with criminal backgrounds, including what is listed there: arson, rape, murder, extortion, kidnapping. The current parliament, 543 people. Out of them, 162 people have pending criminal charges. Out of which 14 of these, 76 MPs have serious charges, cognizable offences, including rape and murder against them. So these are people who are legislating in parliament. You see that if you compare 2004, 2009, the number of people who have criminal charges go up. A very interesting fact is that a person can't vote when he's under trial, but he can fight an election from jail. Now going back to what I was talking about earlier, what I'll try and do is, since we're I think short on time, I'll try and condense my talk. That $4.9 billion that I was talking about, it varies obviously. Some constituencies and some candidates spend less, but generally what ends up happening is votes are bought. So for example, I didn't want to write the name because there is a court case going on at the moment, but the ex-mayor of Madurai was distributing 5,000 rupees to buy votes. This is done in various ways. At 2 in the morning when the election commission is sleeping, which you talked about, people go around distributing cash. People receive cash in newspapers and envelopes. The other big expense is liquor. liquor, a huge amount of liquor is distributed. In the Delhi elections last year, this local elections, so this is just for the city of Delhi, which is a union territory. It's treated as its own state. 143,000 bottles of liquor were impounded. So you can imagine the kind of there is a lot of obviously very tight and vigilant surveillance. There are revenue officers in what are called flying squads, which are attached to police stations, and they try and stop this. But it's very hard. Obviously, you've got an idea of the scale of the Indian elections, and it's very hard to control. Liquor, money, and other materials which are taken to constituencies. So going back to the initial few statistics I told you about, if you see the two big parties, the national parties, the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, and the Congress. So I'm sorry, it's not very clear from this. The green line represents the total number of MPs they have, and the red line represents the number of MPs that have criminal charges against them. This is the current parliament, and obviously across the board, as you go up the board, you see that as a proportion of the total number of seats various parties have, it's a higher and higher percentage of people who have criminal. The regional parties have a much higher percentage of criminals, people who have criminal charges pending against them. And I'll come to the regional aspect of the Indian elections in a few slides. Now, in the Western media, in England, in Europe, in America, and everywhere in the world, actually, we're obsessed with statistics, and we're obsessed with exit polls and Gallup and Pew and all these kind of organizations. In 2004, the Congress came into power completely unexpected. I was actually involved in those elections in UP. No one I spoke to either had any idea about the Congress coming to power. All the exit polls were wrong. Then in 2009, again, I'm sorry, the red is not very clear. I should have. Anyway, those are the names of various TV channels on the left. The columns, as you go from left to right, it's the BJP alliance, BJP-led government, the NDA. The UPA is the Congress-led, and the Third Front and others. And again, the exit polls are quite wrong. They're not as wrong. So I'm loath to predict. There's a lot of hysteria at the moment about whether one candidate will win or not, but I think India is too vast a country to predict this. And as I was mentioning earlier in the previous slide, a lot of things happen in the last few days which do determine elections. Votes are bought, liquor is distributed, alliances are made and broken. So, the elections, I mean, if I was to be asked to sum it up, I would say the elections, the process of the decision of making a vote actually happens in the last 24 to 48 hours of polling. Everything up in the run-up to that is basically it's a tamasha, it's a show. So again, 2009 polls tell us something. Now, around the world, people I've been speaking to and people who I've been in touch with through journalism, these two are the people who come up first and foremost in conversations about elections in India. Rahul Gandhi, who is now the vice president of the Congress party, and Narendra Modi, who's the incumbent chief minister of Gujarat. He's been chief minister of Gujarat for 12 years now. And basically, one of the problems, as I see it in Indian politics today, is that the issues which are debated and fought over are not those of development or sustainable development or economic issues, except broadly speaking, and they end up being about personalities. And if you follow election speeches, it's often a lot of ad hominem attacks on the other candidates, and everyone has something to say about someone else, which reduces the level of political discourse often to superficialities. People are not. This does not obviously mean that people in villages are not aware of what's going on and are not aware of the issues for which they're going to vote. But in the media, if you follow the media, it ends up being this clash, this battle of personalities, and I would urge you to see beyond this. They are important figures. Obviously, there are two of the people who you had up on your slide for potential prime ministerial candidates. But the others are Rajnath Singh, who I also I think that he's also a potential BJP prime ministerial candidate because for various reasons Narendra Modi might not be acceptable to a coalition. Then there's Mulayam Singh Yadav from UP who represents the OBCs, the other backward castes, according to the Constitution of India. Nitish Kumar, who also represents OBCs mostly. All these people represent coalitions, but this is the predominant vote bank. Jayalalitha in the south, Mayawati in BSP, again, scheduled caste, Muslim combination, and Karunanidhi in Tamil Nadu, and his party, as I'll explain to you, came to power on the basically it was an anti-Brahmin party initially, and then obviously it changed as all parties do. These are three more faces to watch in the current elections. Naveen Patnaik is Chief Minister of Orissa. Arvind Kejriwal, who is this sort of breakaway renegade who has disturbed a lot of people in India with his politics. And I'll speak about that. Maybe we can speak about that more in the question and answer. And Mamata Banerjee, who's Chief Minister of Bengal. So all these figures are very key players at the moment, depending on vote share, depending on various alliances which will be made and broken over the next 2.5 months. We will see on May the 16th. We will see what government comes into being. So now to talk about some of the issues about which people vote, right? I think it's very important to differentiate between various types of voters. We have a burgeoning middle class, anywhere between 350 to 450 million people. We have an equal number of people who live below the poverty line. Below 350 million people who live below the poverty line. Poverty line is defined an urban a person who lives in urban India below the poverty line. He's deemed to have less than he needs 32 rupees, which is a ludicrous calculation. And then again, this is a remnant of the Planning Commission, which is a socialist remnant in India, and their calculations are often mind-boggling. But 32 rupees is what a person is deemed to need living in a city, minimum, and 26 rupees in rural areas. So anyway, so in my experience in the elections, obviously there's some issues which are universal, some issues which are made across India by political parties and are on the table, as it were. But there are certain issues. 75% of India lives in rural India. 75% of Indians live in rural India, and their issues are very different from those of urban India. And the first three on this list here, Tehsil, Thana, and banks, are in my experience often what a lot of the elections revolve around. It is basically it is almost a kind of the skill of a politician is his ability to negotiate these three things and basically act as a broker for citizens. In land security, basically here means that people own less than an acre of land, for example, less than a fifth of an acre of land, and there's a lot of land grabbing, land mafia, and so it's a kind of protection from the administration. Thana, again, it's the police, physical security from criminals, from mafia. And banks, this is a newer phenomenon because often rural areas, they're state and union public banks, and to take a loan from them, often you have to bribe the manager of 10% of the loan. So in that, again, the politician plays a role because that percentage can be brought down through the involvement of a politician. I've listed basic infrastructure fourth because it is, believe it or not, lower down as I perceive it on the issues on which people vote. And then there are issues like reservation, price rise, and subsidies, which are also shared by the urban vote bank. I think the people who are, it's not that people are pro-corruption in rural areas. Corruption is very much a problem there. The reason I've listed it in urban areas is because the issues on which rural Indians are voting tend to be so much more basic that corruption is endemic, and they complain about it. And I've worked in villages across northern India where it is something which is complained about, but it is acknowledged, and people then vote on these three issues. Then obviously the middle class, as I said, vote around wider areas of economic policy, of tax, of how much foreign direct investment is allowed or not allowed, and they also talk about government reservations and price rises. So often, so these are sort of summary, and these are not all the issues. These are just some to give you an idea.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what reservations mean?
So sorry, yeah, I was going to come to that. No. Reservations here means basically in India there's reservation, caste-based reservation, for better or worse, and so various. The Constitution of India lists various castes according in schedules, and basically. With VP Singh, who was the Prime Minister of India, and the Mandal Commission, a 27% reservation was started for other backward castes, which basically, if we go back to this slide, Mulayam Singh's politics and Lalu's politics in Bihar and Nitish Kumar's politics, they all revolve around the OBC vote bank in so other backward castes, in conjunction with, say, the Muslim vote or the Thakur vote. It depends on caste votes. And one of the biggest issues now within communities, so even within Muslims, for example, there's a breakup now where certain Muslims want to be identified as backward caste and therefore listed for reservation for government jobs. And that's basically that is an election issue, and it's given a lot of weight in the media. And because of the way, I'm going to come to regional politics, and because of the way regional politics has developed, it has become a very important factor. The bottom bit of this slide, frankly, I don't think when someone is, it's thinking about his survival day to day, they're really voting on the basis of the Naxal movement or the Telangana or Kashmir or national security or Pakistan. These are big policy issues which people who are involved in policy talk about, and the media in particular loves to emphasize. But I think the reality on the ground is that these tend to be more for political speeches, more to give a kind of sense of urgency to political speeches. But I would say that the most of the voting decisions are based around the other points. So down to back, this is where I was going to talk about reservation, religion, and caste. So in India we often talk about these categories of Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Jain, Isai, Christian. But if you, and I don't have time to go into a breakup in question and answer, you can ask me about it. In my experience, and statistical analysis also shows this, that it's very rare, except for exceptional areas, for very small areas, that people vote according to their according to a homogeneous religious identity. South Indian Muslims, for example, and within South India, Muslims in Kerala have very different problems from those in Tamil Nadu, from those in Hyderabad, and similarly in North India, it's a world apart. There is no consolidated vote. There is no. So I take issue with one of the points which various political parties bring up, which is called a minority appeasement, right? That certain political parties try and act to appease minorities. Now, as an electoral gesture, as a political gesture, it's fine. But what the ground reality, it doesn't translate into it. I mean, you can appeal to the Muslim community, but the Muslim vote is going to be split 6 ways. And people are cognizant of this the reality. And then, of course, local politics comes into being. And as you said, I mean, you can have the constituency I come from. It's a predominantly Dalit, and it's equally Dalit, OBC, which means Yadav or Kurmi. The names denote the caste background, and Muslim. And it is a Muslim Ansari who is the MP for the district, and it is a Muslim, her husband, who is the local state assembly representative. In the neighboring constituency, it's an OBC. I mean, and the caste breakdown of these districts don't necessarily, you would imagine that it would pan out otherwise, but local and regional politics have become very important. And this is where I also wanted to say that often Indian elections are projected as these great battles for central power in India, and I'm of the personal opinion that even if a party is elected to central power in India, often it'll have a very hard time implementing policy, because there are a lot of regional parties that have to interface with it. So if the BJP or the Congress are in power in the center, they are not going to be able to. So there's central schemes and state schemes, and there's a lot of bureaucracy involved in how to implement them. But often it's a negotiation, and so the voters in India suffer. The citizens of India suffer because of this. This is, I already talked about the fourth bullet point here. The other thing is, what I find very striking and interesting in my experience of the Indian elections is very rarely is the category of citizen invoked by any of the political parties. So even though people, I would say, don't vote, they vote according to caste affiliations, but other factors are taken into account. No political party really has tried to talk about the idea of a citizen of India and to be of service to a citizen of India. Maybe because there's so many types of citizens of India. And this is where the Aam Aadmi Party comes in, and it's made an interesting intervention, because it's come up and it's risen on the back of issues which are universal. Corruption is a big issue. Economic policy is another issue. Again, we can talk about the details of this, but unfortunately, I think it's very unfortunate that political parties often invoke religious and caste identities in their election campaigns, and even caste identity, and these sort of entrench almost these categories, and it's a cynical way of doing politics. It is a form of politics, but unfortunately, very few people talk about the citizen in India, in my experience. So. Again, this is to build on what Mr. Turmella was speaking about. These are just, I wanted to give you an idea, because India is often, spoken about in economic terms. It's an economy which is growing at 6% at the moment, which is not bad or not good, because you need to break that down further. India and policymakers would like to often compare themselves to Brazil, to the BRIC countries, to Brazil, to Russia, to China. But these, some of these statistics here really give us food for thought. Again, if you follow the election coverage in India, these are not issues which people are talking about. The issues people are talking about is religion, about Muslim, about Hindu, about funnier things, which I'll come to in a bit. But there's very little. And people will talk about development as a kind of grand narrative, but not break down what that really means. So here you can see various sort of the F and the M in the fourth row means female and male. So this is India compared to these 16 countries: Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Burma, Cambodia, Haiti, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Moldova, Nepal, Pakistan, Papua New Guinea, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, and Yemen. As opposed to those countries that it normally likes, people normally compare India to. And you see that, it is at the top of the list in terms of per capita income in US dollars, but it is shockingly down the list in terms of infant mortality per 1,000 live births. It's 47, average is 45, it's 10th in the list. Literacy rate, again, female literacy rate is 74, male is 88, it ranks 11th and 1st in that order. And then a proportion of children under 5 who are undernourished. This data is taken over a period of 4 years from 2006 to 2010. And again, they're very worrying figures. You showed a picture of the poor sanitation conditions. Again, we see here that 34% of people have access to good sanitation. The average is 57, and it's ranked 13 out of those 16 countries. Shockingly, again, it's very, what I said earlier, I'll repeat again, it's very hard to talk about India in generic terms. There are vast disparities in India. So, for example, you have certain states like Jharkhand, like Madhya Pradesh, like Bihar, who, in terms of their economic indicators and their indices, are comparable to Mozambique and Sierra Leone and Sub-Saharan Africa. You have others like Kerala and Tamil Nadu, who would do phenomenally well and place beyond this list if treated as independent countries and not as states in India. So bear in mind that a lot of the information that I'm giving and a lot of the information that you get in the media is somewhat skewed because the disparities are so big in India. Now, one of the elections, I gave you a picture of Narendra Modi earlier, and development is one of the issues that is being made a talking point across the board, according to candidates. And Gujarat is somehow held up as a model of economic development. I'm sure that there are a lot of Gujaratis in this room, so I'll be careful in what I say. So if you look at Kerala, nearly across the board, I've got 6. I don't know if you can see at the back. Can you? You guys can't see it at all. So I have 6 indicators here: female literacy, proportion of children between 6 and 14 attending school, under 5 mortality per 1,000 people, proportion of adult women with low BMI, proportion of population below poverty line, and median per capita income. And these are some of them are 6 years old, but these numbers don't fluctuate that much. If they're going to go up and become better, it's only going to be by a couple of percentage points. And we see that Gujarat is actually quite middling in terms of its ranking compared to other states, whereas the way it's being portrayed in the international media as well as in Indian media, it's being portrayed as a beacon of success. There are a great amount of, this is not to paint a completely bleak picture. There's been a lot of investment, there's a lot of FDI, but there is argument about whether there's any trickle down of that investment. And I have an entire report which I can share with you here, published by Avaz, which uses the research of Amartya Sen.
Actually, that report, I disagreed with them.
No. Okay.
The reason is statistics, they can lie a lot.
No, of course.
I'm a career statistician.
Of course.
Kerala state, for example, yes, from the beginning it is like that. So if you have
if you allow me to continue, if you allow me to
said, no, I just wanted to say that it is actually, this statistic is not correct.
Right. I mean, that is your opinion.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I would say that.
Sorry to stop. Yeah, go ahead. Yes. Sorry. Just wanted to give you that caution.
I didn't interrupt your presentation.
No.
I disagreed.
Tamil Nadu. You said about Tamil Nadu. See, that statistic is not correct.
Yeah,
Gujarat is actually, I would say, predominantly successful because it's had an entrepreneurial community going back hundreds of years. And I think actually India's success as a country is because our citizens of India and various corporate entities as well as the private citizens of India have invested a huge amount of money into India, and that's and again, this is people are free to disagree, but that is the growth that I think you see being reflected. It is not a result of government policy, because if you look at indicators over the last 65 years, whether it's Congress government, whether it's BJP government, they both play to the populist tune. I take my hats off to the entrepreneurial community in Gujarat and to the economic to those people who are privately contributing to the economy in India, because I think those are the people who are really making a difference. And I'm going to recommend a few books. Amartya Sen, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics, he's written a book which are and a lot of these statistics are from that book. Maybe you can be in correspondence with him, and Jean Drèze, who's economic policy planner. Anyway, we can talk about that more in the question and answer. Both these charts are from Amartya Sen's book called India and Uncertain Glory. I'll give you the reference afterwards. So now to come to the more light-hearted bit, as I promised earlier. It's very interesting. A lot of the popular on social media, on various other things, it's very much about the individuals who are fighting the elections, not so much about ideology, not so much about issues. And so one of the things, it's died down a little bit now, but one of the things which suddenly took off is someone made a very, I think, unacceptable comment about Narendra Modi. A Congress leader made a very unacceptable comment, and he referred to Narendra Modi as a chaiwala. Basically, Narendra Modi, when he was younger, he used to sell tea, and he's risen through the ranks of the party, and he's through his determination and hard work, and it was meant in a derogatory way. So the response of the BJP was to have a Namo tea, and they built these tea stalls. which they call chai pa charcha, or a chat over a cuppa, if you like, and that took off on social media, on Twitter, on various other in the media in general. And then in response to that, Rahul Milk was started, and they started distributing Rahul Milk, and also Priyanka Khichdi, which I didn't put here, and Lalu of Bihar, who is very famous for his comic speeches. I'd set up his own stall saying that I'm the original T-Man. So I wanted to end with a few pictures of various election photos, posters, because I think they give you something of an insight into some of the thinking. This is not to generalize. This is not to say that these are the only aspects of these political parties, but they nonetheless reveal something. So if you look at the Congress Party, with Rahul Gandhi there standing at the front and saying "Main nahi hum," not me, us. He's got the sort of mandatory secular. In India, when people are very sick of secular, they call it secular, and they spell it SICKULAR. So a lot of people will complain about Rahul Gandhi's secular politics, but this is obviously a poster which is meant to appeal to a secular crowd. The people from all the various communities there. I don't see a Sikh person. Yeah. But anyway, then Rahul Gandhi again, those are two posters being put up, and you see the kind of dynastic politics of the Congress Party. He's trying to draw legitimacy from the legacy of his great-grandfather, Jawaharlal Nehru, who's there on the right. And the Congress Party, various parties, the Congress Party has a longer dynasty to work with, but even the newer regional parties like Mulayam Singh's party, like the DMK, various parties, they all have, everyone wants their son to take, or daughter to take over what they build. The Aam Aadmi Party, with its symbol, the election symbol is the broom, is promising to sweep away the Congress, which is the hand, and the lotus, which is the BJP. Then we have Narendra Modi, who talks of nahi soch, nahi ummeed. This is about his rhetoric of development, about wanting to make India into an economic powerhouse. This bottom left is from Bombay. I'm a patriot, I'm a nationalist, I'm a born Hindu. Some people critique the BJP's politics for being right-wing Hindutva politics. It's not a generalization which can be made flatly across the board, but that nonetheless represents one aspect of the BJP.
That's said by Gandhi, eh? Narendra Modi was quoting Gandhi.
But, I mean, it's being used in the context
of... It was used by Gandhi in 1990.
That was a colonial...
Hind Swaraj, that's the book.
No, but I'm not talking about... I'm talking about the current elections, the reality of the current elections.
It's not about Hindutva, so just wanted to...
No, I'm talking... Right, I don't think anyone would deny that Hindutva is part... I mean, I'm coming to it in the last poster.
Come to that, okay.
where India is depicted as a goddess, and the line of Gujarat, you see Gujarat on the left there, and the line is emerging from Gujarat, which is meant to be Modi. These are all, there are people I've interviewed, Jaswant Singh of the BJP, who I think is a very polished and refined man, and he is in the BJP with a certain ideology, and the Shahnawaz Hussain and Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi, who are two Muslims in the BJP, who have their own ideology, but nonetheless, there's a spectrum of politics, but these give you a glimpse. And then if you look at some of the regional parties, you see Mayawati on the top left, and there's a picture and then these long tables of statistics, which obviously if you're passing on the road, I don't think anyone is going to stop and read them, but nonetheless, it looks impressive. This is what I've promised and this is what I've done. Mulayam Singh there, his election symbol, Mayawati's election symbol is the elephant, same as the Republican Party in America. Mulayam Singh's is the cycle, Ummeed ki cycle he calls it. Then the JD has this kind of very end of days kind of poster calling the election the second Mahabharat war. Karunanidhi there, it's a supporter of Karunanidhi who's tearing his chest and showing that Karunanidhi resides inside, which is again a allusion to the Ramayana, where Hanumanji tears open his chest, and Ram, the Lord Ram, is revealed inside. Then you have Mamata Banerjee in the middle on the right of Bengal. And again, a survey of all these posters show you the importance of the individual and a cult of personality, which is so important in the Indian elections. And the last one perhaps shows this most aptly, because you have Jayalalitha, who, and this is obviously a Photoshop, you can't see it, but you have George Bush, Obama, Jiang, I think it's Deng Xiaoping, and Gaddafi at the background. And all these people are very kind of subserviently standing there, ushering her into on the political red carpet. So these are some of the books I thought I might recommend to you. As I mentioned earlier, those statistical tables are from An Uncertain Glory, India and Its Uncertainties by Amartya Sen and Jean Drèze. I agree that statistics can be manipulated, but certain indices have been found to be true by international organizations, by local statisticians, as well as people who have conducted polls. Vishnu's Crowded Temple is an interesting read if you want a longer read about the subcontinent, particularly about India since 1857. Religion, Caste and Politics, Christophe Jaffrelot gives you an idea into these very categories and what impact they have on Indian politics. Right Politics is a book I wanted to mention earlier. It's very interesting because often people try and portray the Congress Party or the BJP as one is secular, one is communal, and I don't think these labels are actually very true. I think politicians are opportunists, and across the board they will do that which is useful to them. And so if this book is very interesting because it's an analysis of the 2004 Gujarat riots. And rather than just going and making it a polemic against the BJP or making it a polemic against the Congress, this Dutch scholar, Ward Berenschot, goes down to the tehsil level and municipal level in the town and talks about and tries to explore the reasons why this violence happened, why neighbors turn upon neighbors, and what causes them to fight with people who they've grown up with, and it's very interesting. Religious ideology is often offered as the answer. I don't think it is that. It's what emerges is a very murky world of patronage politics, of dependency on certain politicians for political favors, and therefore they're susceptible to manipulation. And I think it gives you an interesting and nuanced idea of what is happening at the municipal level in Ahmedabad in Gujarat without trying to push a polemical reading of the situation. And then Pratap Bhanu Mehta is a columnist for the Indian Express, and he's head of the Center for Policy and Research Studies, and it's a good book which deals theoretically with India's political system. And finally, The Idea of India is a general, easy-to-read book by Sunil Khilnani, which covers the last 100-odd years with a particular emphasis on post-independence India. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll hand it over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your very interesting presentations. Obviously, most of what you want to say has been left between the lines, so we have to distill it. Let me tell you a short anecdote before we go on. Last time when I went to Ahmedabad, and we landed there, and somebody had come to receive us, and then she was phoning her boss that I can't see the man, but ma'am koi Modi sahab jaisa aa raha hai. So she was trying to, fortunately or unfortunately for me, compare me to Modi sahab. I was wearing that Modi collar that time, so it was. However, I think before we open the questions, I want to put forward a couple of issues here. One is that I don't think either of our presenters thinks that any one party is going to get the majority of the seats in the Congress. So in the tradition of the last at least 10 years in India, it's going to be a coalition government. Now, as you know from parliamentary systems of this kind, modeled on our system here generally, is that the president is more or less obliged to invite the leader of the largest party to form the government. And the question at the moment is, which one is going to be the largest party? Is it going to be the Congress, or is it going to be the BJP, or neither? That's, as Ali Khan said, probably something which only the last 48 hours can tell you. At the moment, there will be exit polls in all kinds of things. The second factor about Indian politics is that because of this third front, or a coalition of parties which could command a majority, none of the two big parties may form a government, and the third front may form. This is where this time it gets interesting, the rise of the Aam Aadmi Party, or the Ordinary Person's Party, which had its election debut in the election for Delhi, makes that potential, if you like, ragtag of coalition, parties coalition, possibly bigger than any of the two put together. So I think, and I'm quite happy that the speakers have introduced at least 7 or 8 potential prime ministerial candidates and not 2. So I think it could be more. We never know. However, in the past, whenever this has happened, Indian politics has been unstable, and then in the following election, we have had some stability. Within these broad parameters, there are all kinds of other issues at play: caste, creed, Hindu, Muslim, all kinds of other things. And even as Ali Khan said, and I agree with him, that the Muslim voting pattern is not on religious lines everywhere. It's different in the north, and it's different in the south. And in the south, it's different between Kerala, Hyderabad, and Tamil Nadu. I think what has not been mentioned, this is the last point I want to make, is that for some time now, there is a major state of insurgency in at least 9 states of India. And this is a sort of communist kind of insurgency, especially on the eastern wing of India, from Bengal right down to Tamil Nadu. And this is casting a big shadow on the kind of parties which will come to power in those states, and therefore eventually on the national stage. I think that's something probably worth analyzing at some point. Finally, when our friend Mahadev says that he is not a socialist, in India nobody is a socialist. In India, if you want to be a socialist, you want to call yourself Communist Party of India, Marxist, Leninist. This does not even exist in China or Russia, but in India it does. So you have to really be very clear to be a socialist.
Indian constitution says socialist.
The constitution says so, but Indians have found a way around so that you got to add anecdotes to your name until it becomes clear that you are one. Okay, we will open the floor for questions. Any questions from the ladies' side first? Yeah, Khadija.
Thank you both. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the rise of the BJP from a regional party to a more kind of national mainstream party and the factors that have led to that. And if there's scope for other regional parties to do something similar?
Go ahead, and then.
I'm sure we'll have very different. The BJP has actually always been a national party. It's not a. It's a mistake to think that it's now emerging from Gujarat or from the region. It's obviously ideologically it's premised on aspects of the Jansangh. The BJP really came into prominence in the after. Well, it depends on what you define as the BJP, but I would say that the BJP came into prominence in the 90s after the Babri Masjid incident in 92. Since then, its rhetoric has changed. So initially there was a strong Hindutva component to it. Lal Krishnan Advani, who's still an office bearer of the BJP, he was one of the people behind the Rath Yatra, which went around India, and you all are aware of the Babri Masjid and the Ram Temple issue. And then after that issue and after being voted into power, economic success became a big issue, and that's what actually they fought the 2004 elections on. India Shining was their campaign logo. And they didn't win the elections. And India Shining, which is, I find it very interesting that they were talking about India Shining then, and they're talking about Vikas or development in this election. Because, the India that was shining in 2002, 2003, 2000, 2001, perhaps, was shining for a very small percentage of India's population. And the people who obviously have a definitive and decisive say in whoever's going to come into power is a mostly rural vote and a mostly poor vote. If you read these books, you can go into which organizations were the BJP's ideological progenitors, and which organizations they drew inspiration from, and their politics in particular. I don't know if you have to.
BJP, certainly, see, there are factors, would say. There are various, it can't be just only one identity or one point. There will be many. I think BJP's rise to power, as I understood it, is started in 1983, 84 Sikh riots, Delhi riots, and at that time itself, there was a kind of economic factors that were actually playing up, and so it actually culminated. A lot of things did culminate, and though people would like to say that it is a Hindutva or Hindu agenda which actually gave rise to BJP, my personal take is that Hindus, even though it's the largest religion in India, but Hindus never, in my personal opinion, stood as a we. It's always fragmented. I mean, you would see Arvind Kejriwal he says that he believes in God. I think he's a Hindu. He says that, and I think so. Being a Hindu, I'm a confirmed Hindu, so I would say that. So I myself, have got this doubt. The Hindus do not vote. I have seen lots of Hindus even on my Facebook who approach me for certain Hindu questions. I do know that they vote completely different parties. So Hindus are actually politically they segregate church. I mean, you call it as church from state, temple from politic. They do separate it right from the beginning, not now. So if they were actually voting like that, BJP would not have lost power, mind you, in 2004 at that time. So you see, Hindus did not vote. Hindus actually from the beginning. So that is something we need to take into consideration. It is not a Hindu itself which actually gave rise to BJP. It's so for example, recently in Gujarat, 28% of Muslims voted to BJP. Definitely, if most Muslims did not vote, they would not come into power. BJP. So Muslims supported. So because I recently read a very interesting argument on one of the Muslim youth leader. He was actually 10,000 signatures they collected, and in that he writes, when Modi lays down a road, it's used by a Muslim who's driving a car, and is also used by a Hindu who's driving a car. So it's actually the infrastructure and the development is felt by everyone. So why should we just say it is a Hindu road or a Hindu whatever? So infrastructure. It's not like that. So India is seen as India, and I think it is not yet, fortunately, not yet driven by the religious identities. Not yet. We haven't yet reached there. Muslims are there who vote for BJP, and Hindus are there who vote for some other parties. So it is not yet to that point. I think it is a factor. I'm not denying, but I think it is not a major factor. My opinion.
I think just to add there, in the early 80s, there were a couple of main developments which provide the framework for something like the BJP to succeed. One of them was the Shah Banu case, which the Indians would be aware of, where a particular concession was made to the Muslim community after a ruling from the Supreme Court. Okay, and in exchange for that, Rajiv Gandhi allowed the worship by Hindus in the Babri Mosque. So this was the beginning of a kind of polarization, if you like, on national scale, and that provided a sort of backdrop.
If I may add to that, I think the Sikh massacres of 1984 are certainly a watershed. But I think it's very interesting to go beyond these stereotypes and blames of just blaming the Congress or just blaming the BJP. If you look at evidence, it was actually all kinds of people, religious and non-religious, turned on the Sikhs. In 1984, there were definitely leaders from the Congress party who are still in power today, shockingly. But there were also people, workers from the BJP, so much so that in 1994, O.P. Kohli, who was a Rajya Sabha member, upper house of India, in 1994, he wanted the cases against BJP workers withdrawn. So I think we have to also, when we're talking about riots, when we're talking about these incidents, we have to actually dissect it down to the micro level. And then you see that the picture is not so binary, it's not so fuzzy. Often it's a revolving set of doors. People often only talk about the BJP vis-a-vis Gujarat and what happened in 2004. But,
2002.
2002. Yeah, no, but sorry.
2000.
But if you look at the people who are put in charge of the Congress in the elections straight after in 2002 when Modi came into power, it were people who are affiliated with the BJP earlier and with the RSS. Shankar Singh Vaghela is one of them. So he was made the president of the Congress party. So much like other countries in the world, there is a small set of actors who are kind of going through a revolving door, changing alliances, changing political affiliations. Just now, over the last 3 weeks, if you follow the news, a number of people have walked across from the Congress into the BJP. This will probably happen again the other way around in a few years' time. So I'm just trying to try to get you to think beyond these kind of distinct binaries, as it were, of these political parties.
Question. Thank you both for both your talks. This is a question for both speakers. One thing I'm slightly confused about still is economic and social policies. So two-part question. The first is, for the major parties such as the BJP and Congress, can you generalize on economic and social policies across the country? And two, are there large variations in what each party is saying on economic and social terms? Or is it more towards the middle?
You go ahead first, yeah.
Again, I would say that you don't treat them as two distinct, diametrically opposed entities necessarily. The Congress most recently was pushing for FDI. Actually, let's start in the 90s and the early 2000s. The BJP and the Congress have had switching positions on foreign direct investment, right? One automatically becomes nationalist when the other is suggesting FDI, and then it vice versa. It flips. And I think in terms of economic policy, as I mentioned earlier, and I didn't go into detail, it is very, very hard to have a uniform economic policy in a place like India where socioeconomic indicators have huge disparities in neighboring states, right? Haryana is not very far away from UP, for example. UP didn't even figure on that chart I showed you earlier, and Haryana in certain indicators is doing better than UP. Himachal is doing much better. It's contiguous with Haryana. So, and as I argued, that the regional leaders and regional parties have become very important, and so there's almost often this deadlock between central planning and regional parties because. If the Congress is trying to implement, or the BJP is trying to implement certain policies at the ground level in X state, then that state will perceive them as not as economic policies which are being implemented, but a political token or political symbol. And so, at the local level, progress is stalled. So one aspect which neither of us talked about, which is actually something which needs to be concentrated on and looked upon is the systemic and structural institutional changes that need to take place in India. Because we have the executive, we have the judiciary, we have politicians. And it is not like we have a bureaucracy which is completely free from political influence. Neither do we have a judiciary which is completely free now from political influence. The judiciary is remarkably free and fair compared to a lot of places in the world. And often, there's a clash of authority because a politician is coming into power for 5 years, right? So he's already thinking about his next election when he's stepping into his shoes. A cabinet secretary or principal secretary is has long-term plans because he's part of the civil services. He has a longer agenda, which might not make electoral sense for the politician. And then on top of that, in India, there's a lot of frivolous litigation, and there's no penalty for frivolous litigation. And so whenever anyone has a problem with anything, they go to court and they can get a stay. They can basically at least put a spanner in the works. So the answer to your question, I think, is that there can be no really uniform economic policy because we both need to industrialize. Agriculture is the heart of India, so we can't completely neglect that. And so various aspects need to be built together, which is hard for one party to provide, I think.
See, if any political party, if you want to understand their manifesto, you need to look at what they're releasing in the media as a single voice bites, and that's how I see it personally. I can go in a big lecture, but just if you see, my good friend Ali already has, he displayed that, Rahul Gandhi, they released this, 500 crores they spent, Congress party, in releasing the posters, Congress posters. For each state, they released one. That's why you don't see Sikh there, because I think it's from some Uttar Pradesh somewhere. So every state has got one. And so they say that, main nahi hum, okay? So that means whatever it could be. I mean, Congress party is known for, I'm wearing now a different hat. So Congress party is, for the last 67 years of Indian independence, Congress party has ruled 57 years. Okay, and main nahi hum means India, I have already presented, India has got poverty, serious poverty problem, main nahi hum. And India has got serious corruption problem, main nahi hum. So I don't know, wherever it could be leading to, we are all together in this corruption, maybe, yeah. Pun intended in my comment. And right, so they are saying hum. Basically, Congress and AAP and all these parties are technically and theoretically they are confirmed socialist parties, and so that means what they would do is that they would take the taxpayers' money and they'll try to redistribute it, whether the taxpayer agrees or not, to that kind of distribution. So it is basically the state takes more control over your money than. Whereas when it came to Gujarat model of development, it actually, Narendra Modi has actually deviated. BJP had deviated, and in a way that it became more industrialist friendly, and that means you have more jobs that are available there, and the statistics can't lie there. Jobs are actually more and more jobs are getting created. So I think.
I thought you said statistics do lie.
No, there they can't, because the individual state they can't.
Right.
So basically, I think BJP is going towards a more empowerment of the Indian citizen, empowerment. Ek Bharat, Shrestha Bharat, that's what they released. And whereas AAP has got, I will actually broom everyone. So they don't have any, it's a socialist policy anyway. And Congress said, main nahi hum. BJP said, Ek Bharat, Shrestha Bharat. That means only one India and fantastic India. So, yeah, and I think that's where they differ. I mean, you could see the policies being driven there. I mean, individual empowerment is BJP, state empowerment by the Congress. Yep.
Anybody else on the ladies' side? Yeah, Kasim, please.
Just a follow-up question. What is the risk that all this political wrangling and different the political system keeps India backward compared to the Chinas, the Brazils, and the other developed countries of this world?
There is a huge risk. Sorry, I'm taking it first. No, yeah. There is a huge risk The fear is that India is not driven by a single. So there has to be a mandate, a proper mandate. No government so far since 1996. I think 96 it started till today in India. No real party has got a proper mandate. Everything is actually like it has become like an Indian khichdi. So all parties come together. They use their own opportunists and they just try to do stuff and it is not helping India. We could see it. So hopefully this time, because 120 million youth are coming into picture, they may drive it in a way that they might give a definite mandate to a single party. And Google, looking at it, I think BJP might come into power because of this. This time, this is very interesting. People will come into power. Many MPs who would get into power with 4 votes or 2 votes, even a single vote majority, because of the first past the post. So the youth are going to decide who will come into the power. Yeah. So that's the reality, and hopefully this time expectation is that there will be a proper mandate.
Yes.
Thank you, Madhavaji. You've been talking a lot about the first past the post as being a bad system
For India.
for India.
Yeah.
I wonder what you would suggest. I mean, from what I've studied of the Constituent Assembly debates, which forms the basis of my
No, it's a fantastic
PhD.
system. No, it's a fantastic system.
No. I mean, you're talking about in India it doesn't work as a
India it
system.
doesn't.
I wonder what system you propose.
No,
would be better.
I propose first past the post. It is a good system, but the Indian Election Commission has to stop these fringe parties. The parties.
Surely in a democracy, we don't have a democracy in the American sense where we have a 2-party system.
Yeah. They have to come together to a table and then they have to talk about it. I wish India gets 3 parties maximum, and then it would work its miracles. But at the moment, it's completely 1,657 parties. They must be kidding. There's like so many parties.
Yes. Yeah, go on. So you want to say something?
No, I was going to reply to both those points.
Yeah.
I think India, for me, India has really seen very many ups and downs over the last, since 1947, since we got our independence. And once an old hack, an old journalist told me that, look, people love to sensationalize things. But in India, nothing is as bad as it seems. Nothing is as good as it seems. And it'll be okay tomorrow. So, in terms of risk and in terms of what kind of impact it will have for India globally as well as regionally as well as locally, frankly, I think that we talk about many Indias, and we have to talk about many Indias. There is a part of India which wants to compete globally, which wants to be an economic super powerhouse. But that's frankly impossible if you have 350 million people below the poverty line. So frankly, I don't think that a 2-party, 3-party system is the solution for India, simply because India is not, as you said in your first slide, India is not a homogeneous country. India is a mind-bogglingly diverse country. There's 16 main languages, 2,500 odd dialects of those languages. Ethnically, people are completely apart. If I go to South India, the medium in which I will convert to some people, Hindi is the national language and a lot of people have learnt it, but there's still villages in South India where I will speak to them in English, right? Because we have no other, I speak Hindi and Urdu, and we have no more. So I think it is very healthy for India, and frankly, the Chinese model has its severe drawbacks. I'm very happy with whatever freedom of speech we do have, even though India gets ranked very low on the freedom of speech index. I'm very happy with our political process as it stands compared to China, because I am free to express my views. I am free to form my own political party tomorrow if I want to, and free to add one more to the 1,600 odd political parties there. And I'm given that right by the Constitution of India.
Yes, like that.
Both you talked a bit about the different ethnic splits, etc. in India. Coming from a Muslim perspective, given that in Pakistan right now sectarianism plays a big role, within the Muslim community in India, is that also a factor in determining politics and stuff? Because I've heard, and I don't know how far this is true, that in the BJP there's a growing Shia contingent, but not very much a Sunni. So is there a sectarian element from the Muslim perspective as well, or not really?
So I would say that politically, to some extent, there's a sectarian element within the Muslims, right? If you look at Lucknow and Hyderabad, there's two examples. It does not always translate politically, but around religious important days which mark the religious calendar, they tend to be clashes. My work, and I've written a little bit of this, I've done a little bit of journalism and reporting on this. The reasons for these clashes, even though in the media they're portrayed as Sunni-Shia clashes, they tend to have actually reasons which are either political or economic. And I would argue that they're the manipulations of someone local trying to either trying to kind of get a property or trying to get consolidate his vote and various other things. In terms of the BJP and Muslims, Gujarat and its statistics, I would say an anomaly. Muslims tend not to vote for the BJP. And this election is going to be very, very interesting in this sense because it'll be interesting to see whether Muslims will vote for the Congress or whether Muslims would, in order to counteract the BJP at the center, or whether they're going to vote for regional parties. So, for example, in UP, whether they'll vote for Mulayam Singh or Mayawati. And what looking likely is that there'll be a Dalit Muslim alliance. So there is, of course, everywhere there is a sectarian issue. It's nothing like Pakistan. I mean, Pakistan, I would say that the biggest problem there is the state itself, right? I mean, there's state sanction for certain, or if not state sanction, then the state is looking the other way, while minorities, including Shias, including Hindus, including Ahmadis, including Sikhs, are being persecuted. Although there are challenges which the minorities face in India, it is not at the level, and there are periodically riots, communal riots, people are killed. In the sustained way in which there's been discrimination in Pakistan, it's not like that in India. And, you can, again, if you read the third and fourth book, you will get an idea of sectarianism in the political process.
I would recommend a book, since my good friend is recommending books here. There is a book by, the book's name, if you want to write, Muslims, Modi and India. Forward by Salim Khan, and there is the Gujarat Muslims, I mean, what they're doing, and so it's a fantastic book, which actually there are lots of video recordings, the transcriptions of Muslims who live in Gujarat. What is their view? And I respectfully disagree with my friend here. I do think that Muslims did, the Election Commission cannot say, because we do know those statistics, at least they are available within the, who voted for whom, at least the constituency level. If Muslims did not vote in those constituencies, definitely BJP would not have come into power. So they did vote. That's because otherwise there is no way there is no chance BJP to win. So Muslims did vote, and we come to know certain.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir, but if people are abstaining from voting, that makes it easier for Modi.
No, they did not abstain either.
No, I'm saying that if
people
were
true.
to abstain,
that's true, but they did not abstain. That's there.
And the percentage of Muslims in Gujarat is 9%. So they're not, and there are very few constituencies in which they actually have a
there are 28
decisive vote.
No, there are 28 which are decisive. So yes, they did vote. They did not abstain, and there are actually this time for the last 2002 onwards, there is if you see the amount of vote, the people who are coming to vote, it has increased significantly within India itself. So there is the people started realizing their democratic power. They're using it, and I don't think there is Muslims within India. India has got the world's largest Muslim population, and they are very peaceful people there.
Indonesia.
I think India is it after India? So
million.
I thought that but very peaceful people. I don't think, looking at, as I said, if you look at India, it's such a big continent kind of, there's so many people there, 1.2 billion. And Muslims are very peacefully living people there. And I don't think, I don't personally see any sectarian problems or strife there. And they tend to vote like Hindus. They also, when Hindus also vote to various parties, Muslims also vote to various parties. There are Muslims who vote BJP. There are Muslims who vote the other parties as well. So I think it's more to do with we as Indians, how we are going to govern our country, whether we could stop this child poverty, the deaths that are unnecessarily happening. You know, so I think the more the agenda of average Indian is going to be proper development driven rather than sectarian or any other. Yeah, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. I think these things obviously are evolving, and just last week when I was coming back from Dubai, it was a Qantas flight, so I had a problem of choosing what kind of meal you will have. So the availability was as follows: kosher, Asian vegetarian, Hindu, and vegan. So obviously kosher we know. So there was no option for Muslim meal or halal meal. So I looked up Hindu. I said, probably that's vegetarian. He said, no. Hindu, and I looked at the explanation, it means any meal which doesn't contain beef. So that's evolved Hindu now, right? Asian vegetarian was one which was actually vegetarian, right? And then vegan was all kinds of other things. So yes, this idea of Hindu personality or identity is quite fluid inside India itself. And one of the things which our two speakers didn't talk about is that the politics of what is called the cow belt, which is the north, is quite different from the politics of the south. However, coalition politics being what they are, we will see what comes out. But this is, even now, I think it's still uncharted what will happen in the elections. But thank you very much, both of you, for making your interesting presentations. And I hope we can have you in the future again, after the elections.
Yeah. Thank you.